walking through the book of Genesis, which is made up of these two main parts.
And the first part begins in the garden, where we watch humanity spiral downward in self-destruction, and it ends in the Tower of Babel, where a rebellious humanity is scattered by God.
Then the second part of Genesis zooms in and focuses on just one family.
And right in the middle is this story that links the two parts of Genesis together and helps us understand what the whole book is all about.
So how do we get from the Tower of Babel to the story here in the middle?
Well, after the scattering at Babel, there's this genealogy, and it follows one of the tribes all the way down to this one guy named Abram.
You probably know him as Abraham.
And God starts making all these promises to Abraham, like he's going to bless him and give him a ton of kids. And he says that through him and his family, all the nations of the earth are now going to find God's blessing. So basically, God is trying to restore humanity back to the goodness of the garden and to his original intentions for the world. So it's like his rescue plan for humanity. And that's why the whole second half of Genesis is about this one family. And so you have Abraham, and then he has his son Isaac, who has Jacob.
Jacob and Esau. So part of God's story is about twin brothers, and it begins like this. Once, there were twins named Jacob and Esau, and they didn't get along. They actually started fighting before they were born. Then during birth, Esau came out first, but Jacob was holding on to his heel. That's not normal, and they even look different. The Bible says Esau's body was covered in so much red hair, it was almost like he had clothes on. Jacob's skin was smooth. Well, they got even more different as they grew up. Esau hunted animals and spent time outside. Their dad, Isaac, was a big meat eater, so Esau was his favorite. Jacob, on the other hand, was a quiet guy who liked to stay indoors. Their mom, Rebecca, liked Jacob the best. The Bible doesn't talk much about Jacob and Esau as kids, but we do know Esau was lucky to be the oldest because he had what's called a birthright. That meant Esau would be in charge of their family, including all their money, land, and stuff. Jacob would probably have to work for his brother Esau, and their dad Isaac would give Esau a blessing, which means Isaac would ask God to take care of his oldest son Esau in an extra special way. Well, you probably think Esau was pretty excited about this, but he wasn't. In fact, one day he gave it up. He'd just returned from a hunting trip. Since he was out killing animals all day, he didn't have time to eat. He came home starving. Jacob was making stew, so Esau said, "Quick, give me some of that stew. I'm very hungry." Now, Jacob was a little sneaky, so he didn't just share the stew with his hungry brother, which would have been nice. Instead, he said, "First, sell me your birthright." And guess what? Esau said yes. It's a little like paying $1 million for a bowl of mushy soup. We don't know why Esau did that, but the Bible says he didn't care about the birthright. But later, when Isaac was really old and about to die, he wanted to ask God to take special care of his firstborn Esau. So he told Esau to go hunting and make him some tasty food, maybe for the last time. Now, Esau wanted the birthright, so he left right away to hunt. Meanwhile, Rebecca had heard Isaac and Esau talking, and remember, Jacob was her favorite. She wanted him to get the blessing. So she did something really sneaky. She told Jacob, "I will prepare tasty food for your father. You take it to your father to eat. Then he'll give you his blessing before he dies." See, Isaac was blind. She was telling Jacob to pretend he was Esau. But there was a slight problem with her plan. First off, Esau was hairy. So if Isaac touched Jacob's smooth skin, he would know the truth. The Bible says Esau had a certain smell too, which might be a polite way of saying he stunk. I mean, imagine how smelly a guy would be if he was always sweating and getting dead animal blood stuck on his clothes and matted in his hairy skin. And this was before deodorant. So even though Isaac was blind, he might smell Jacob or touch his smooth arm and know the truth. Well, Rebecca was sneaky like Jacob. She told Jacob to put sheepskin on his arms and wear some of Esau's smelly clothes. Now Isaac would never know. And even though Isaac wondered why the voice sounded like Jacob, guess what? The trick worked. Jacob got the blessing. Now Esau would have to work for him. As you might imagine, Esau was furious. In fact, Rebecca had to help Jacob run away so Esau wouldn't kill him. What's really crazy about this story is Jacob messed up big time. but he really did get God's blessing. Esau even forgave him later. We don't know why God let this happen, but the truth is we all mess up sometimes, and God still wants us to be part of his story. So, in case you missed it, here's the quick version. Jacob and Esau were twins. They were different. Jacob tricked Esau. Esau sold his birthright for stew. Later, Esau wanted his blessing. Rebekah helped Jacob trick his dad Isaac. Jacob got Esau's blessing. Esau was furious. Jacob ran away.
After Jacob stole his brother's inheritance, he was scared. He ran away and went to live with his uncle Laban in Haran. Laban tricked Jacob into marrying his daughter Leah, but eventually gave him his other daughter, Rachel, who Jacob wanted to marry all along. Jacob got richer, and his family got larger. As time came for Jacob to leave his uncle's land, he took all his family and belongings and started to travel. Jacob's travels took him close to the land of his brother Esau. Jacob was still very scared and decided to spend the night alone while he was preparing and waiting to meet his brother Esau. That night, as he was alone, Jacob saw a figure emerge from the dark. His fears gripped him. Could this be Esau? Was Esau now trying to murder him in this lonely wilderness in the dark of night? Jacob was not going to let himself be harmed, so he decided to go on the attack. He rushed toward the man, knocking him to the ground. He was determined to find out who this man was. He would wrestle this man as if his life depended upon it. The fight began, and they wrestled for hours. Neither man could defeat the other. As the fight wore on, Jacob realized that he was not fighting with Esau. In fact, he wasn't sure who this stranger was, but he knew that this wasn't an ordinary man. The light began to break, and the stranger asked Jacob to let him go, but Jacob refused and wanted to know the stranger's name. Finally, to end the fight, the stranger simply touched Jacob's hip socket. Immediately, Jacob felt his leg weaken as his hip shifted out of joint. Even though he tried to wrestle, he knew that he couldn't win. "Now, let me go," the man said to Jacob. "It's morning." But Jacob knew that this was no ordinary man. This was a messenger of God. In spite of his pain, Jacob had a hold of him. "I won't let you go unless you bless me," Jacob said. "What is your name?" the man asked. "Jacob." Then the man blessed him. "Your name is now Israel. You have fought with God and men, and you were victorious." Something very special had just happened to Jacob. The sun rose gently in the sky as Jacob returned to see his family and face Esau. Jacob was a changed man. He walked with a limp, but he had a new name, a new identity. God had given Jacob a promise, and he would keep it.
Creation, then comes the fall, and then the flood, and then the nations. And then 4,000 years ago, in a place called Ur, which is near the Persian Gulf, which would taste like salt, that reminds us of Sarah, Abraham, Lot, and Terah, who go down the Tigris and the Euphrates to a place called Haran, and that's where Terah dies. Now let's remember our map. We have the Sea of Galilee, the Jordan River, the Dead Sea, the Mediterranean, and then here would be Israel. Abraham had two sons, Ishmael and Isaac. Isaac had two sons, Esau and Jacob.